Hello there, you're watching The Pulse on the JoyNews channel. This afternoon, pressure is mounting on government to exempt individual bondholders from the controversial domestic debts restructuring program. We'll hear from a group calling itself the Pension Bondholders Forum, the latest to petition government to consider sparing pensioner individual bondholders.
A restated exchange memorandum which rope in individual bondholders, we pensioners who hold government of Ghana bonds have come together through this forum to petition your office to exempt all pensioners holding government bonds from the exchange program.
And we're continuing with our special campaign. Experts are warning the continuous use of plastic materials poses untold health risk to humans. Will engage the Ministry of Environment, Science and Technology for possible solution to Ghana's plastic waste disposal menace. It's all coming up here on The Pulse. And as the race hits up for the New Patriotic Party's presidential flag bearership race, we'll also hear from the former Trade and Industry Minister Alan Kyerematen, who says he is on a transformational agenda for Ghana as he concedes President Akufo-Addo could have done some things differently. It's all coming up here on The Pulse. The Pulse, as always, is brought to you by Global Communities Dignilu, affordable, safe sanitation. We're on DSTV channel 421, GoTV channel 144, also on all of our social media handles. It's at JoyNews on TV. I'm Blessed Sogah, and you're watching The Pulse. We're back shortly with details. Please stay. You're welcome back to The Pulse. Pressure is mounting on government to exempt individual bondholders from the controversial debt restructuring program. A group calling itself the Pension Bondholders Forum is the latest to petition government to consider sparing individual bondholders who are on pension. They argue that the absence of a regular source of income will spell doom for them should government fail to heed their call, as their existence depends on the proceeds they receive from their investments. We'll hear from Dr. Antwi, who's the convener for the group shortly. But first, my colleague Michael Chalet has been interacting with some affected individual bondholders. There's more.
More opposition for government's debt exchange program. Just a few minutes ago, a group calling itself the Pensioners Bondholders Forum just appealed to government to exclude their funds in good faith, just as it did for the pension schemes. I'll be talking to some of the individuals that make up this forum. What is the backstory for them? How did they take the message from government to decide to go this way? Corti is one of the members of the forum here. Henry, so let me ask you, hearing the message from the minister, the communique from the ministry, that individual bonds were going to be added to the debt exchange program, how did that hit you?
Okay. Initially, when it came, he promised that individual bondholders are not affected. It looks like it's a way, indirect trick to work us in. That's the way I see it. Because how can you start your exemption from the individuals, and then later on, after some few days, you come back and say individuals are included? It's so bad. I will explain to you why it's so bad. I didn't work here. I work in America throughout my life for almost 22 years. And the way I did my savings is to be saving my money, and I save the money in bonds. Because you said you needed money, the bonds went to them, but we didn't come to it. When you go to the bank, they advise you to do treasury bill or bond. After having done this for 22 years, I come back only to come and meet you telling me you are going to use your money to pay an external debt. So it's not good in any way, because let me tell you, like you are saying, some of us are sick, some of us can fall sick. Like I'm saying, when I came back here, I've contacted Parkinson's disease. You have my money. You see? So like they are saying, they have to change it to me. If they ask me to suggest, They have to change it, like our chairman is saying, include even those they have exempted, because it's a national issue. It's a national issue. So you can't exempt anybody. It's a problem, let's face it, and face it realistically. They have to bring them back. We all get involved, and like our Mr. Antwi, the doctor is saying, we solve the problem together. But it shouldn't go to the extent of 5 years, 15 years in an order. Let me tell you, I can assure you, I'm not cursing myself, but I know I will die before 15 years. So, I'm not cursing myself. It's a fact. They have to take all this in consideration. Can't you see from my face I will die before 15 years? Jesus. So they have to be realistic, brother. Work out something good. I came to help you with my money, with my word. All the years. Now you say you are taking the money. You paid me 15 years when I'll be a dead man. No.
For you, what were you going to use this money? What were you using this money for? For which government taking it from you would mean that for you?
Like I said initially, I brought all my savings over the years down, and it comes in big. I asked my wife, right here, go to the bank and do 40,000 treasury bill. Oh, this time we got some money. Go and do 60,000 treasury bill. So the money pile up over the years. The motive behind, when I come home and I'm no longer working, I use the interest to live. And that is what he has taken. So this is the way I've affected.
Let me ask you the hard question here. How are you going to cope if government decides to go ahead?
How am I going to cope? It is going to be really difficult. Because it means I cannot be buying medicine, I cannot go to be a doctor and all that. Even paying electricity bills, sometimes I can't 300, 400 for water. So it is going to be really difficult. Feeding will be difficult, medication, everything will be difficult. Very difficult. Life is going to be, really impossible and difficult for me. So I'm talking to the government to reconsider its decision, bring up with a workable plan, and like I said, everybody must be on board. Nobody should be exempted. Because I can say I want to take my money when it's due. I don't want to resort in court, but if I want, I can do it. But let them work out something really good. The length of time should be considered and all that for interest must be considered and all that so that it works good.
Well, my colleague Michael Ashali there, thankfully Dr. Antwi, convener of the Pension Board Holders Forum, is joining us live for more here on The Pulse. Thank you, sir, for your time. So I'm just wondering what your initial steps will be. What do you intend to do in the first place to try and mount pressure and to get results for what you're demanding? Dr. Edu, if you can hear me, I'm just asking what your next steps are. Where are you starting from? And what should we expect from the group going forward?
Well, thank you. As I said at the press conference, we have submitted a petition to the minister, copied the president. And this morning, too, we have submitted a letter to the minister asking for a meeting, give us audience. And we have suggested that she agrees to meet us, have a meeting with us before the close of this, the period for this invitation. So we are waiting to see if the minister will let us in to have that discussion with him.
Okay, then I'll try and get the details of what it is that you'd be seeking to do during that meeting. But first of all, give us a sense of the numbers. We know that there are different class actions going on in the same regard. But why is your case unique? And how many people do you have in your age group who are joining this mass action?
Well, let me start that when the program came out first, and no individual was part of the program, I was happy that the individual bondholders were not going to suffer. The second program that came, I realized that, as we all know, that the pension funds has been exempted from the program. Pension funds are funds that are due to people who will go on pension. And government thinks that it should not impair the income that people will be getting out from their pension money. So wants to exempt the pension funds from the program. Then I said, if you are exempting pension funds, which are yet to be paid to people who will be going on pension, then why even to exempt the pension fund that has already been paid to pensioners and they have invested in your bonds, and that is what they are using to take care of their life till they die. So it doesn't make that much sense to me to exempt the people who are yet to receive the funds, but not to exempt the people who have received the funds and they are investing. And that is their main source of income. In Ghana, you can't talk about state pensions. That doesn't go anywhere at all. It's people's investment that they are living on. So if you have exempted funds that are yet to be paid to people who go on pension, then it stands good. It makes sense to also exempt the people who have already taken their money and they have invested
and I was
in
just
government
asking,
bonds.
and I was just asking
I
earlier.
decided
Yeah.
to.
And I was just asking.
That's why I decided to take up for the pensioners.
Yes, precisely. That's why I'm asking about the numbers and how dire your situation is. Yeah.
As at the time, I think by this time we should be at. As at the time we were meeting, we're getting to 300. Few numbers to 300, but by the time we will finish this and people are adding on, as I talk to you, I've gotten so many people which must be added, whose contact must be added. I haven't gotten time to do that because of this. So definitely, I know we have passed the 300.
I was just hearing the story of one of the. Yes, I was just.
At the time we were writing to the minister, we were above 200, but now we are passing 300.
Okay, so that's about 300 persons. But I was just hearing the story of one of them, just one out of that 300. The how touching it was and how shocking it is that you find persons whose entire life savings would have to go down the drain, not necessarily down the drain, but would have to be deferred because of the debt exchange program. How many of such stories do we have? Persons in that age category who are scared. They may even lose their lives before the return on investment yield.
I think you have to come again. I didn't get that.
Yes, I was just talking about the touching story we were hearing of one out of the 300. That person obviously says he's not confident, he's not sure looking at his age that he would be able to live to see the return on investment. I was just asking about some other personal stories. You're part of that group as well, as to how dire the situation is for members of the group who are now appealing for government to do something about this.
As for the personal stories, if I want to share with you, we will have to have a whole day. Because even if I want to read those that have been received from WhatsApp messages to me, that is too much. People are just going to suffer. How can you live a whole year without interest from your investment? Your hard-earned money you have put in government bonds, and government say for 1 year, I won't give you anything. How do you buy your medicine? People are calling from the hospital. I'm now a hospital bed. I'm going for dialysis. Nobody is catering for that. It is from your pensions money that you have invested over the period, which you are using to care for that. So it is a problem. Yes, this is somebody has reported on our platform that one of such persons have passed on.
Already?
People need money to care for themselves, yes.
Someone has died already as a result of this?
Passed on, yes. You know, what I'm saying is that your money, you need your money now to care for yourself.
Let's get that clear. Were you saying that someone just passed, someone died because of
what
this?
I'm saying is that part of the members that we have,
right.
It is reported that one has passed. Of course, we are human beings. Somebody will die. One has passed. But what I'm saying is that person, if he needed his money, it can happen to anybody. He needed his money to take care for himself, and it's not coming. Definitely more people are going to suffer.
Well, that's shocking. Let's talk about the meeting with the finance minister. Exactly what are you seeking? What audience are you seeking? And what do you bring onto the table now for government to consider?
Well, our first, the petition itself was to appeal to government to exempt pensioners who are holding government bonds from the program. That is what our petition is seeking, that exempt the pensioners who have invested in bonds, just as you have accepted pension funds. But when we go, it is a discussion. We would like to hear from government. We would like to hear all sides. And then we see going forward what we should do.
How about the legal option? You're not striking that chord as other members and other groups are doing. They are, for instance, taking on a class action. We know of lawyer Martin Pebu, who's leading that charge. Will you get there if government fails to vary the debt exchange program in your favor? Will you consider a legal action?
Well, I think now we have sent a petition. We would wait and hear the outcome. That's not the only option available for resolving issues. But I believe that we might not get there. I believe that government will listen. Since other groups, and as I said, what I was doing was to cater for the pensioners. Since other groups are also coming up, maybe what government must do is to try and start negotiating with all these groups and find a way out.
What do you say to critics who are of the opinion that you're just being impatient? This is the only option out for government. The fact that you'd have to wait for a few more years, your investments are still guaranteed, except that we're in an economic crisis. So you'd have to share the burden with government so your investments can be guaranteed. Is it right to have that opinion?
You see, sovereign debt default and restructuring, at least I'm happy I teach even in that subject at the master's degree level at Lagos. Sovereign debt default and restructuring. If you know you are going to default, you have to restructure your debt. But in the restructuring, the key thing is negotiation. Negotiation. You negotiate with your creditors to agree on how they are going to allow you to bring a new program. Negotiation. Without negotiation, you can't impose anything on your creditors. They have the right to their money. So if you can't pay, what you have to do is to negotiate. I am emphasizing negotiate. If you don't negotiate, you can't impose your will on anybody. And we are not the only country, the first country to go into that restructuring. The number of the books are there, the history is there, countries have gone through. Meanwhile, as we speak, government is meeting representatives of foreign debt holders, right. The foreign investors. I read that they have appointed a committee or whatever team to meet the government. Why would government negotiate with them? Why would government meet them? And if you meet your foreign investors, why don't you think you have to meet your domestic investors? We all have equal rights as bondholders. There's no difference between the rights of a foreigner who holds government bonds and the rights of government, whatever bonds, yes, it's bonds, Euro bonds, and the right of domestic bondholders. Government must negotiate with domestic bondholders and come to a compromise. We are all Ghanaians. We don't want to destroy this country's economy. But you don't want also to destroy.
If you're with me, sir, some are pointing at
negotiation.
Yeah, I get the point. I get the point about negotiation. Yes, I get that point about the negotiation. But some are pointing us to the initial address by the finance minister, the fact that he says that, quote, this is part of the IMF conditionalities. You know the implications of that too well, don't you?
I don't think the IMF said government should not negotiate with us. Come out with a program. And that program, when you are coming out, I believe you have to negotiate with people whom you owe. It's basic principle. If you owe somebody and you can't pay, you sit somewhere and dictate to him what you want to do. No. You go to him and say, Chief, I am unable to do this, so let's come to agreement and do this. If you all come to agreement, why won't we allow the country to move forward?
A lot of people are listening to us now. As we wrap up, what's that special message to authorities and those who indeed have the power to make a change now?
I believe that the whole thing must be renegotiated. Bring everybody on board. pension funds, mutual funds, every fund, individual bondholders, let every domestic investor be part of this discussion. And I believe we all as Ghanaians, we will find a way out that will be a compromising position for both the government and the bondholders.
I'm grateful, and it's a pleasure speaking to you. Happy New Year. We hope that you get some results from government in the coming days. Dr. Antwi speaking to us there, here on The Pulse. It's a brand new year, and many things have either reset or are starting on a fresh note. Well, not inflation, because the latest data released by the Statistical Service shows another surge in inflation for December 2022, driven largely by steep increase in food, transport, and housing costs. It went up by 3.8%, 54.1%. That's what we're dealing with as of December. It is the 7th highest inflation rate in the world among 120 nations, including the Eurozone. And according to Bloomberg, of course, that's the highest. So listen to government statistician Professor Samuel Kojo-Kobina-Enim, giving a breakdown of why we're at this record high.
Was food and non-alcoholic beverages 59.71%. All these 5 divisions recorded inflation rates higher than the national average of 54.1% for the month of December 2022. On a month-on-month basis, keeping in mind the national average of 3.8%, we equally identified 5 divisions that on a month-on-month basis recorded inflation rates higher than the national average. But this was led by transport with 6.65%, followed by furnishing, household equipment 5.04%, all recording inflation rates higher than the national average of 3.8%. While we identified housing, water, electricity, and gas recording the overall higher inflation of 82.34%, its contribution to overall inflation was 15.7%. Keeping in mind the contribution of food and non-alcoholic beverages having a weight of about 43.7%, its contribution to overall inflation was 47.5% for the month of December 2022. So although housing, furnishing recorded rates higher than food and non-alcoholic beverages, because of its weight, it had a higher contribution to overall inflation of 47.5%. The division that contributed the least to overall inflation was insurance and financial services, that contributed 0.1% to the December 2022 inflation rate.
You're watching The Pulse. We are back shortly. And you're welcome back to The Pulse. Don't forget, record high, 54.1%. That's the latest inflationary figures of December 2022. Well, we'll get the views of industry shortly. In studio with me now is data analyst with Joy Research Desk, Kofi J, with some analysis on this. And Kofi, I see some figures for you, the last 3 months of 2022, I guess, and where, of course, we are now in terms of the breakdown. Just help us understand some of these figures.
Well, first, I want to start with these the 3 bar charts you see here. First is the headline figure that you just spoke about, 54.1%. That is average inflation. If you go into detail, you find items with inflation rates more than 100%. So it simply means that if you needed, let's say, 100 cedis, to buy a good worth 100 cedis. Now you need somewhere around 200 cedis to buy that same, good with that same money. Now, if you look at the rates for non-food inflation, it's a little bit below the headline figure, 49.9%. But the highest, this is actually higher than the headline figure, is food inflation, which is more than 59%, 59.7%. So just look at these 3 charts that you see on your screen. A headline inflation figure of inflation is 54.1%. Non-food inflation is around 49.9%, and food inflation is a whopping 59.7%. We've actually been tracking this. We want to know how we started 2022 and how we ended 2022. So we started the year 2022, that is last year, with an inflation rate of 13.9%. This inflation rate, we said, was higher because we were moving from the rate of single digits, the 7.9, the 9.2, and then the 8.7 zone to 13.9%. Then we saw inflation rising when we started February, and it started rising from 15.7% to 27.6%. Then we saw Bank of Ghana coming in with monetary policy rate hikes. Then we saw inflation started, the rate of increase started declining. So it was increasing, but was increasing at a decreasing rate. So instead of this curve you see going up like this, we saw the curve actually bending. So we saw inflation, taming down, the rate at which it was increasing, coming down from 27.6% to 29.8%. Then, if you see this 3 points, the last 3 points, and you compare them to where we started the year with, you can actually see that these last 3 points, October, November, and December inflation rates are actually outliers. I was actually expecting, December inflation to be somewhere around 52 or 53 because we saw, diesel prices, fuel prices coming down. The cedi was actually gaining some strength. But aside from, these low rates that we see, we ended the year with a very high rate of 54.1%. So let's just look at this. We were expecting the curve to go this way, so I was right. The rate of increase actually decreased, but the rate is still high at 54.1%. So we decided to track the various inflation rates. How do we end every year? Especially, I'm talking about December inflation. And just look at this 54.1% figure and compare it to December inflation rate in 2013. In 2013, December, we ended the year with an inflation rate of 13.5%. In December 2014, the rate was 16.9%. If you look at December 2015, 17.4%, it started declining right from 2016. We are seeing this, like a bowl shape over the U shape over here, where inflation started dropping. So we are looking at currently December inflation rate. But if you compare right after COVID, this is pre-COVID, and post-COVID, even during COVID, 2020, December inflation rate was still around, 10.4%. That's when we saw it moving from the single-digit zone to a double-digit zone of 10.4%. Then 2021, we ended the year with, 12.6%. But if you look at 2022 inflation rate, how we ended the year, it's a complete outlier from all the figures we've been seeing. We look at the top 20 key drivers, and women underwear is still in. It's been in for 3 consecutive months with inflation more than 80%. Blessed.
Let's look at some of the key factors driving this. Are we able to pin that down?
So just like I spoke about women underwear, and if you look at the food aspect, for instance, we still see some cereals still making the list. But still, we are seeing petrol, diesel, all featuring being key drivers of the current inflation rate that we see. On the regional breakdown, for instance, we still have regions recording inflation rates higher than the average figure of 54.1%.
And then the argument comes up about the dollar and the cedi rate. The performance, and many attributing to what's happening to inflation as well. Is that far-fetched in terms of drawing that comparison? The fact that, well, the cedi gained marginal strength, then now it's beginning to woefully perform, a reason for which we're seeing that sharp increase in the prices of commodities.
Yeah, so if you look at this chart, you see that, just like I was saying, we're expecting the curve to go this way, straight up, but we see the curve bending. Probably you can attribute this to the kind of appreciation that the cedi saw in the month of December. Remember that in the month of December alone, the cedi gained more than 40% of its value against the dollar. When it had lost more than 54%, it gained more than 40% of its value in just a month or 30 days. The cedi was really doing well. That is why we didn't see this curve following this trajectory, but rather started bending. So we are hoping that January inflation rates also the curve will bend further downwards, probably to, let's say, 52 or 53%. But if you look at this curve, you can actually make the deduction that the appreciation of the cedi in the month of December had an influence on the rate of increase actually decreasing here if you look at the curve.
We pray for the very best. Kofi Ajay with our data team here at JoyNews. I want to bring in now Dr. Joseph Obeng, President of the Ghana Union of Traders Association. Doc, thank you for your time. Earlier, you were asking your members to work on the prices of goods and services on the market, but it appears that looking at what's happening on the ground, it's a far departure from the picture you were seeking to paint. What's accounting for this? Non-compliance or simply the natural cycle of the market?
Businesses do forecast, and that they want to have a long-term stability of the currency. And so you recognize that the dollar came down, the cedi appreciated in value, but it was short-lived, and then it started going up. When it happens like that, people cannot predict the stability of the cedi, and they will not also reduce as it is expected. And so what will translate for the benefit of the consuming public will be a long-term stability of the currency, and that is very important. And so we have already said that most of our members could not also reduce their prices because they are retailers. The retailers, particularly, they could not reduce the goods because they are bought at the peak prices, and they have nothing to do with the forest. So when the forest comes down, those people are unable to reduce their price unless they are finished with their goods and then restock. And so they are the people who cannot reduce. But most of our members responded positively, and most of the prices came down. But one thing
that you're backtracking, am I getting that sense that you're backtracking on the order you gave to your members at the start of the year? You asked them to revise their prices on the market.
I'm not doing that at all. But I've told you, if government wants prices to go down,
right,
then the onus lies also on government. Because I've told you, businesses do forecasts and they do speculate. Because once the benchmark reversal benchmark was reversed, it means that duties have started going up, VAT have also gone up, and at that time, people are then forecasting that we are going to clear our goods at a higher prices. So business, they won't sell their goods at cheaper price, then they go and pay higher duties and all that. Don't be a rational business person who would do that. And so forecasting of some of the things to come. The kind of inflation that we are experiencing here is cost-push inflation. And that if government wants to do something about it, they can do about it. If somebody is going to pay a VAT of his purchases 21%, it's a huge cost. And that is not my making. It's not the traders making. If the duties that we used to have benchmark discount to mitigate the plight of the consuming public have been taken off. And that's why we were calling the government to make sure that the goods that are produced here are protected, and about 80% goods that are not manufactured here, the benchmark should be maintained.
Invariably, you're asking government to start off with its approach on the taxes. That's precisely what you're asking.
Exactly. They are all parts of the cost build-up. The inflation that we are having is not as a result that we have excess liquidity, excess money, supply chain steam fuel goods. That's the elementary system. What we have here is cost accumulation. The duties that we pay, the foreign exchange, the foreign exchange, and then the freight charges that we pay, and then the taxes that we pay, such as the VAT that has gone up, they accumulate to form the past. In fact, I do not know what is put in the basket, the inflation basket. But then if they are imported, then of course, most of these factors that I've mentioned contribute to the kind of inflation that we are having. It's a costly one.
Yeah, we are
not even expecting that the Bank of Ghana go ahead and also increase the monetary policy rate because the inflation has gone up. Because it also comes around to compound the situation. Because capital acquisition then goes, cost of borrowing goes about over 40%. And it all also come back to add up to the cost of doing business and then show up inflation again. And so these are the areas that we have to look. If we want to do something about it, we can do it. It's all about pruning down the cost of doing business by way of limiting some of the taxes that we pay, the duties that we pay, and then the cascading effect of the VAT. All of them contribute to the inflation that we are experiencing.
Well, we need to be mindful of this. This is as of December 2022. We're in a new year. The factors are different now. Government taxes, including that of the VAT, which you're dreading so much, was setting from this year. It could complicate the situation, isn't it?
That's exactly what I'm saying. Because especially when these factors have started working, the VAT started the 1st of January, benchmark reversal started 1st of January. Then, of course, the duties are going to go up. Only today, somebody called me the exercise goods that you used to clear, 20 meter of about 45,000, has gone up to 100,000 Ghana cedis, the duty that you used to pay. So think about the difference in duty payment alone. And it's going to be added to the cost. And then if you put such an item on the inflation basket, then of course you see upward trend of the price of that product. And most products are going to see that because of the changes in the duties that we are going to experience or started even experiencing from 1st of January.
You made this public that engagements had commenced with government and other stakeholders somewhere late last year in a bid to address some of these challenges that you have. Now you have another opportunity this year. The situation is rearing its ugly head again. The concern is what steps are you taking to engage stakeholders further at a time when, of course, many say this is when you need the solution and we need the solutions fast. So what moves are you making as GUTA?
Yeah, it's not only GUTA, it's the entire nation at that. Because the consuming public have been at the receiving end. We are not for the Christmas, whatever cost that can will transfer onto the consuming public. So it shouldn't be a fight by the trader itself. We should all, if it is working against us, come behind GUTA and then talk to government to remove, because especially with the VAT, definitely government can do something about it, even though it has been gazetted in Parliament and passed on the bill and all that. But there are so many things if the citizenry cannot do. Because with the VAT, I've told you the structure of the tax system itself is not conducive for compliance and is creating a lot of problems. The cascading effect of the VAT, especially on the provisions, that's the food items and all that, it is just too overwhelming. So if we are talking about 21%, now cumulatively it will go about 21% being slapped on a essential commodity like milk and all that. Then of course you see that prices will go up.
So what are you looking for as the business community? An immediate reversal?
No. For the benchmark, what we have said is that government wants to help the local industries to thrive, to boost local productivity. That's all right. We want to support that call. But what we are also saying is that the import requirement that we do we can only outsource about 15 to 20% only within Ghana. And so the bulk of about 80% shouldn't attract the reversal of the benchmark, so that the discount policy should be maintained on those items, so that the consuming public will be mitigated, especially around this time that inflation is so up, and so that the consuming public will be mitigated. Because when we are doing all these things, we have to also look at the final recipient, who is the consumer. And it's very important. And so it's a call that everybody should call the government, so that they will know that the suffering masses need some respite. Yeah.
Dr. Joseph Oping, we're grateful. Interesting times ahead. We'll still be on the lookout for the latest development, but I'm grateful for your time here on The Pulse. Well, our penchant for everything plastic, including water, is giving the country a huge headache in terms of managing it. According to the United Nations Environment Programme, plastic pollution is a global problem. Approximately 7 billion of the 9.2 billion tons of plastic produced from 1,950 to that's from 1950, I should say, to 2017 became plastic waste, ending up in landfills or dumped on our shores. The extent of the pollution is scary. So I will be engaging the Ministry of Environment, Science and Technology for possible solutions. But first, let's bring back our hotline documentary put together by my colleague Samuel Kojo-Brace, titled Plastic Waste, Crisis of Our Time.
The plastic is very simple to take it everywhere. You can use it to travel safe, but the glass, you cannot use the glass to travel.
James, a trader at Adabaka, telling me his preference between plastic and glass bottles. He tells me plastic bottles are safe for him than glass bottles.
The plastic is good. You see, the plastic, two people cannot use the plastic. Only one person can use the plastic and throw it away. But the glass, you use it, they take it back and go and fill it again. So it will give an infection to people, you understand? But the plastic, you can even throw it away.
David, an entrepreneur, shares this reasoning of the plastic bottle being healthier than the glass bottle.
I like plastic because of the health issue attached to the plastic. The advice given to us on the radio, so it has gone into our mind that preferably plastic is better. If you handle plastic bottle, it can just fall down and then everything's scattered. But for plastic, you can take it back.
But it is not everybody that shares this reasoning. Sam is a regular patron at the popular restaurant in the capital city, Accra. He says, with his knowledge of the negative health implications of plastic bottles, he prefers glass bottles.
When it comes to the way we dispose of plastic waste, we don't separate it from the other waste materials. So recycling it becomes a problem, and you go through a lot of cycles to separate them, and cost-wise it's high. So comparing the two, I think bottle will do.
Surprisingly, I came across more people who are alert to the health impact of plastic bottles and are therefore choosing glass bottles.
The main reason why I prefer the glass bottles is that whenever you buy, let's take it for instance, with soda, Coke, and mineral and other stuffs, where they are ready to take the breakable bottles from you. But when it comes to the plastic, when you buy Coke plastic, you take it along, and if there is no substitute for keeping it safe, you realize that they will put it in the gutter, they will put it on the floor, and it becomes dead. You understand? So when it comes to the bottle aspect and the plastic aspect, I think I will support I like the bottle aspect.
So if today there's a ban that let's not produce any plastic bottled product, you would flow with it?
I'll flow with it because probably I believe some years to come, we are going to realize it's going to help us in terms of keeping the city clean. It's going to help the nation very well.
For me, I prefer the glass bottles. You know, with the plastic bottles, it has become a big, let's say a big challenge, and you see that a lot of plastics on the streets. You see a lot of plastics on the street, but it is very difficult to see glass on the streets. Yeah, so I will go for the glass bottle.
So how is this impacting the decision of restaurant operators? Isaac Lai is a supervisor at Champion Dishes at Dabraka. He says people consider the easy handling of the bottles they choose.
Maybe the person wants to take it out or something, or want to take it home. The person cannot, most of the glass bottles you cannot take it out, but with the plastic ones you can take it out. Yeah, but most of the people who come to Champion Dishes, so they prefer the plastic bottle because most of them, what they say is that the plastic bottle is easily to handle. And with that one, you can take it out. But for the glass bottles, when you need to drink it and then leave the bottle here.
To him, some people also do consider the health impact of the two before choosing.
You know, the plastic one, when it's easy, after taking the drink, you dispose the bottle. You need to put it in the bin or something. But with the glass one, what most of them have in mind is that with the glass one, after taking in the drink, it will be sent to the company. The bottles will be sent to the company, and then maybe they need to go through a process of cleaning. Yeah, they need to clean it and stuff before they can refill and then cover it again. But with the plastic one, now after they've taken the drink, they will dispose it. They have to put it in the bin, and then after everything, you have to put it in the bin. Then when they put it in the bin, with that one, it will be disposed into. They will throw it away or something, or it will be taken to a recycle place for them to. Yeah.
Well, excerpts of our documentary, Hotline documentary, Plastic Garbage, the Crisis of Our Time. We can now bring in the Ministry of Environment, Science and Technology for some responses. Lydia Iswa is the Director of Policy Planning and Monitoring as well as Evaluation at the Ministry. She joins us now via Zoom. Thank you for your time. Are you able to tell us the current trend of our plastic waste collection and how we're treating them as a nation?
So thank you so much for the question. A very good evening to you and good evening to your cherished listeners. We at the ministry here have information to the fact that about 17% of domestic waste is currently plastics. We also have data to the fact that from about 1992 through to 2008 and 2019, our plastic waste component of domestic waste has grown from 0.7% to 2.8%, and then currently we are at 17%. We also know that less than 10% of the plastics that are generated, waste generated in country, are recycled. Know that. And information available to us also points to the fact that about 9% of the plastics waste generated leak into the ocean. So your question on what is the recycling capacity that we have as a country, I would want to step back and give a bit of policy background on what the Ministry for Environment, Science, Technology, and Innovation is doing. So my Honorable Minister, the Honorable Dr. Kwekwe, is championing, and currently we have a National Plastics Management Policy that has been approved by Cabinet. I must add that we are yet to officially launch the policy, But then if you visit the ministry's website, you will see a copy of the approved policy by cabinet on the website. So the policy's main objective is to create wealth, create jobs, as well as protect the environment. So with these three-pronged objectives, we have key focus areas of the policy that drives those principles of growing the economy, creating jobs, and also protecting the environment. Let me quickly add at this point that the development of the policy was hinged on the principle of circular economy. Right now, the whole world, every country is moving along the principle of circular economy. And it is against the backdrop that our natural resources are very finite. If we continue to mine, use them to produce products, and then dispose of them, ultimately our resources will be finished and we will not have any natural resources to live on. So this new economic model of circular economy is to ensure that right from the design of products, manufacturers think about three key things, which is the durability of the product that is coming to the market, the fact that the product should be reusable, and also the fact that the product should be recycled.
Okay, so that's forward-looking. But a lot of water has gone under the bridge, as we would say. How do we deal with the problem on our hands now? I guess that's the question. And that big question has always faced the ministry as to what concrete measures you take on banning single-use plastics. Are you closer to taking any steps on that?
So I knew that this question will by all means come up, but the minister and by extension the ministry, working together with our sister ministries, Ministry of Local Government, Decentralization and Rural Development, Ministry of Sanitation and Water Resources, Ministry of Fisheries. The policy direction is that the banning should be gradual, and we should be able to carry the citizenry and private sector along with us. Because you need to remember that there are companies that are producing these plastics. They have current jobs, factories, machines that are at work and producing it. So we cannot just get up one day and say we are banning. So the discussion has been carrying private sector along at every stage of the discussion until such a point that both policy and private sector come to a conclusion that this is the point, this is the time, and we are ready to roll out the banning of plastics. But my minister is always engaging private sector in this endeavor.
How about partnerships with CSOs, with citizens as well in dealing with this issue? What measures are you exploring on that front?
Sure. So with regards to partnerships, one of the key things for having in place to be able to better manage plastic waste has to do with the setting up of the infrastructure. So the collection points, the deposit schemes. One of the people you interviewed in the documentary was saying that once you buy the bottle, in previous times, you could return it. Here we are now, you have the plastic, you don't know where to take it, and then we later around. So it's important that we have in place collection centers. It's important that we have in place recycling companies who will be in a position to recycle the collected plastics materials that are sent to their companies. And that is the reason why the ministry is working closely with the private sector. We want to put in place the enabling environment that will enable them come up with many more of these companies and companies to recycle these plastics. But linked to the fact that we are providing the enabling environment is the fact that it's quite capital intensive to set up the infrastructure for recycling.
Right.
So we also want to put a policy in place for extended producer responsibility. So a company produces, let's say, a bottle product, and you put it out in the market. By way of policy and regulation, the ministry would demand that you are able to show evidence that the number of bottles you put out in the market, you've been able to collect those same numbers back, geared towards reducing the plastics that are polluting the environment. We also have a wonderful working relationship with GRIPE, which is the Ghana Recycling Initiative by Private Sector, and it's under AGI, where selected companies, a few of them I know, Coca-Cola, I know Farm Mill, a few of them have come together, pooled resources together, and are setting up collection centers within communities. On the Palace Street in North Carnation, if you go to the filling station there, you will see the collection points there. So you carry your empty bottles from your home, you get to the filling station, you deposit it there, and then you leave. So as much as possible, collection and recycling is private sector led. And for us as a ministry, all we are doing is to put in place the necessary policy, the regulations to facilitate their job.
And very finally, is there any expectation of the public as well that will ease and aid the implementation of the policies that you have set out?
Definitely. We need the public to be mindful of the fact that if we continue to pollute our environment with plastics, it has dire consequences. And the documentary brought all the negative impacts of plastics in our environment to the fore. Come to mention of the health issues that we have, pollution of our fishes, the food that we eat. Ultimately, the food that gets to your table is polluted. And therefore, as part of the policy, one of the main focus areas is behavioral change and awareness creation. It's one of the areas that we will need the private sector to support government to have a continuous and sustained awareness creation, which will ultimately lead to behavioral change. That as much as possible, right from the kindergarten and pupil to myself or any other adult person, we will know how to manage the plastics that we use so that we don't litter around and ultimately be impacted negatively by our health as a result of the behaviors, our actions of just littering around with plastics.
Well, the conversation is just starting. I'm sure that in the coming days we'll see a lot more from the ministry. But I'm grateful for your time. Lydia, this was Director of Planning at the Ministry of Environment, Science and Technology. Thank you for joining us here on The Pulse. And please stay with us because we have more coming your way. You're watching The Pulse. We'll be back shortly. And thanks for staying with us here on the JoyNews channel. Trade and Industry Minister Alan Kyerematen says he is a great transformer and is on an agenda for a transformational plan for Ghana, which will be he will be seeking to implement once he gets the nod as the President of the Republic. Alan Cash, as he's affectionately called, says he believes that the President Akufo-Addo could have done things differently. The former government appointee was speaking in a televised address last night.
The President has laid a strong foundation for the socio-economic development of our country, although I believe there are things that could have been done differently. My vision is to build a superstructure on this foundation that will bring prosperity to our nation. The pre-COVID-19 performance of our economy, the flagship programs including the free SHS, the One District, One Factory initiative, the Planting for Food and Jobs program, the Agenda 111 project, and the COVID-19 response initiatives are all testimony of the strong leadership that the President has provided over the last 6 years. In spite of all the above, however, it is an undeniable fact that the combined effects of the COVID-19 pandemic and the Russia-Ukraine war has stampeded our country into a crisis of unprecedented proportions, with the negative impacts on the economy, on businesses, and on our social lives. I have no doubt that the anticipated International Monetary Fund IMF support package will restore confidence in our economy and bring it back to pre-COVID levels. Fellow countrymen and women, this is the 17th time that we have gone to the IMF over the last 57 years. We promised never to go back, but we've gone back. One of the lessons that we have learned from the recent developments is that Ghana's economy is still fragile, vulnerable, and susceptible to both external and domestic shocks. This primarily is as a result of the fact that our economy is highly dependent on the export of commodities with little or no value addition. Indeed, the 5.1% projected GDP growth for the Ghanaian economy for 2023 is based on the anticipated increase in commodity prices. To avoid going back to the IMF, we need a new plan, a plan that will lead us to a more self-reliant and resilient economy. That plan must move Ghana from stability and growth to transformation. Fellow countrymen and women, if by the will of God and through your goodwill, I'm voted first as the flag bearer of the NPP and subsequently as President of the Republic in the next general elections, I will become the transformational leader of our time, who will build on the foundations that have been laid by successive leaders of our nation over the last 65 years. To achieve this strategic goal of transforming our dear country to become the shining star of the new Africa, I will, as President, launch and lead the execution of the Great Transformational Plan, GTP of Ghana, which will span the period 2025 to 2030. The post-COVID economic recovery program, currently being implemented with the anticipated support from the IMF from 2023 to 2025, will be a transitional economic program leading to the rollout of this great transformational plan. Countrymen and women, before I proceed to provide a brief insight into the key elements of this great transformational plan, 7 critical considerations will need to be taken into account to guarantee the success of the plan. First, the primacy of the private sector in our national development agenda. The private sector, both domestic and foreign, formal and informal, has to be at the center of our transformational agenda. The government's focus must be to facilitate the process of making our private sector competitive by creating an enabling environment for businesses. 2, attitude to work and enforcement of discipline. We as a people should appreciate the need for discipline in all spheres of our national lives and change our attitude to work. Whether you are working for the private sector or for government, as a worker, you are not doing a favor to your employer. It is your duty to ensure that you earn your living from the efforts of your labor. 3, corruption and petty theft or thievery, particularly from the public purse, deny our country the benefits of utilizing its tax revenue and other resources for for the development of our country. 4, the arrogance of power has been a major obstruction to progress in our country. People in positions of authority must understand that leadership is an opportunity to serve the people and not to lord over them. In servant leadership, humility is an asset and not a weakness. 5, passion for excellence. As a country, we must celebrate competence and excellence and not mediocrity. 6, as a people, we must focus more on getting things done than just talking.
Alan Kyerematen, I want to bring in now former MP and a member of the communications team for the Alan's campaign, Catherine Apeku. Thank you for your time here on The Pulse. So when your candidate says things could have been done differently, exactly who was he referring to? President Akufo-Addo? Hello, madam. Thank you for joining us here on The Pulse. I was just asking the question that your candidate was pointing out that things could have been done differently in terms of handling the economy. Exactly who was he referring to? The president?
Good afternoon, Blessed, and thank you for having us on your show. And big afternoon to your cherished listeners. I don't think in his speech he made any mention of any particular name. There are different governments, different leaders in our times, as he made mention of the last 57 years. So I think it would be a little mischievous if we pinpoint a particular leader, especially our own leader and our own government. He did not say that. Let's not impute meanings into his statement. His statement is a build-up on the transformational agenda, which he is part of until the 16th of January. And he just laid out his vision. It's actually a welcome call for other aspirants, potential leaders who will take the baton from President Akufo-Addo to also lay out their vision and let the people, the delegates, and the nation discern, see, and then ascertain who's best fit and best ready to take the baton. So I think that's what I would take as an import.
What empirical evidence is available to give confidence to Ghanaians that this is a man that indeed has that transformational plan?
Can you repeat that? I'm actually
what evidence?
Your voice is not clear.
Well, I'm just asking what evidence is available for Ghanaians to indeed trust that this is the man who has the transformational agenda.
The evidence is in his track record, Blessed. This gentleman is not a novice. He's been around for the last 20-plus years. His track record speaks for itself, from his days of an ambassador, a former minister in trade under Kufuor, a minister of trade that ends at the 16th, leading in the UN, going through UNCTAD, doing the EU, the AU. So this is not someone who's just off the mill. Alan Kyerematen is a household name, and his economic prowess, his legal background is something that Ghanaians, especially the business community and the party at large, are very, very conversant with. So if you need evidence, they will say it's in the pudding. People do know of the brand Alan Kyerematen, and he's actually appealing with his vision, which is building upon the transformational agenda that you all have been witnesses to, the automotive policy. Now we have vehicles being assembled in Ghana. Hitherto it wasn't there. 8 years of NDC. We didn't hear or see any of these innovative policies. We have the AFTA, African Free Continental Trade, with the headquarters in Ghana, and he was one of the chief architects making it happen under the leadership of Akufo-Addo, the president. So evidence is abound. We are going into a contest, and people will have the opportunity to sell themselves, sell their vision. He's proactively, strategically led by stepping out and telling Ghanaians his plan. It's a build-up on the transformational agenda of the government that he has been part of, and until January 16th, he will exit. So evidence abounds, Blessed.
Some have asked the question about due process. Why announce almost what's like a manifesto to the people of Ghana, even when your political party is yet to go through that process of choosing the next flag bearer of the NPP? It's as though he's setting himself as the de facto leader of the NPP.
I think that's an opinion that may not be shared by a lot of people. If you're a leader, you are born ready, you prepare for the opportune moment. This is a gentleman with a track record of excellence. He has stepped out of government. He has a lot of followers, and they would want to hear from him as he had pledged in his build-up to resigning, leaving office, stepping down, that he would speak to his constituents to give them a reason why he's stepping out. So as to the timing, it was well thought through. He had advisors, he had a team, he had people who work with him who are always on point. So the timing, for your opinion or for a few people, majority will always lead. And he feels very strongly that this was the right moment. And you've seen it. It's on all the social media and all the analysis that has been out there. The timing is perfect. In fact, it was way overdue. So I don't think the timing is wrong. What he said is purely proactively sharing some of his thoughts with the good people who are discerning enough to know that he is preparing himself, lacing his boots, and stepping out. Others are taking cue, they've stepped out. Others will also, in good time, come out with their vision and their plan. This just shows a mark of leaders. The leader is always prepared. As for timing, it is in the head of the leader, and when he strikes, you know that he's ready. So, not everybody is going to agree that his timing is good, perfect, or bad. But in our midst and what is happening, hope is needed, and he has stepped out at the right time to let people know what he stands for. I don't think it's bad. Blessed. I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all.
And the choice of words that he puts out in the statement has brought up a lot of questions as to whether or not he's running away from responsibility. This is a man who was part of the economic management team when an economic crisis has not owned up for what many say is, partly to blame for. Why didn't he take that responsibility and say, we apologize for how we've managed the economy?
Blessed, I think you're not being fair to our government. When the heat was on, Kyerematen, the outgoing Minister of Trade, was on air all over the country. One of your sister stations, Asempa, which broadcasts across the nation, heard him loud and clear, assuring the citizenry that this is just a valley, we will come out. He was on Paul Adam Orchard, not your station, but a sister station on Good Evening Ghana, extrapolating and sharing the assurances given at cabinet to the nation. This is a gentleman who proved his mettle and allowed the Ghanaians to see that when under pressure, he stands out. The economy is not impacted. We are coming out and we are on the path of recovery. The IMF deal is through, and in the next 3 years, we will go through this strict fiscal discipline and come out with flying success. So this is a time for those who are ready to lead to step out, allow government business to go on, not distracted. Blessed, I think the timing is right. There's nothing to apologize and be sorry for. All discerning Ghanaians know that we are at the corner. We are turning around. Look at this currency that brought the brouhaha. You know and I know because you have it every day on your station.
Yeah, but I'm asking the question.
We are making a turnaround. It doesn't happen overnight, but all people who have been patient following the NPP government knows that we have done what it takes to stand in the gap when it was really tough. The dollar is going down to 5.7 very, very soon. So please give us credit because we have done what we can do. We had to do so. There was no light at the tunnel. We've had worse crisis without COVID, without Ukraine, and we survived in this nation. We are resilient people, but give credit to MPP. We have done well. We are around the corner, the bend, and we will overcome this together.
Well, I'm not asking necessarily because of what I think about the NPP government, but even if you go to portions of that statement by Alan Kyerematen himself, after 6 years, he's telling us that he's learnt the lesson that our economy is still fragile and weak and vulnerable to external shocks and factors. So it appears that we have a hard time coming up ahead, as he's warning us about.
Blessed, if you go back in our history, even in 1960, the economy was still undergoing shocks. When we overdepend on raw materials as a nation, we will always have these shocks. So it is nothing new. And when a gentleman who's been around the mill, who has been part of the process of the transformation, speaks the truth, I don't think we should criticize ad nauseum. He said it like it is. Africa has a continent, we over-depend on raw materials, and we are at the mercy of the winds of change in other global markets. I don't think it's anything or an indictment on anybody. It's on us as Africans to look and do the paradigm shift of adding value. The NPP government, second term, has started that, and he is sharing his vision that given the opportunity, given the baton, as he's poised to be the next leader, he will expand the transformation agenda as in the GTP. So, I mean, it's all the dots are crossed, all the T's, and you can see this man is ready when given the opportunity. As for the dissecting and reading through the lines, that is our job. You and I will have to read and then go through it word for word and scrutinize, but it won't change the course. The course is he's ready to lead. He's the right man to win power for the party, and the baton will move from MPP government to NPP government. That is what we are talking about. The man is ready, others are ready, and we'll all go out and compete, and the best man will get the job to continue from where His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo will leave it.
Finally, there are talks about a measure, a possible blend of having the Bawumia-Alan Bawumia campaign combining forces to contest the 2024 elections. Have you put this to your preferred candidate?
Blessed, have you heard of a Jogate Bawumia ticket, Abachi Ejako Bawumia ticket? Have you heard of Adainimo Bawumia ticket? Have you heard of any of Akoto Bawumia ticket or Kennedy Bawumia ticket? Why Alan Bawumia ticket? It tells you these two are the top contenders from the analysis that you're making. But I think that the stuff you said is just what it is, talk. People, every single person in that category that I've mentioned is poised, is ready, and they will compete on their own merit. Until the National Council comes out with that kind of statement, it's just talk, where we should leave it.
So this is not something Alan will be open to?
I cannot hold brief for that, but I know that in competition, that is not what it's about. You compete effectively, and when you win, you continue, and if you lose, you support the winner. I don't think this unity talks is here or there. We are in the same fraternity, and we are competing on our merit. Those who have allowed themselves and ready to be scrutinized and judged on their own merit and leadership acumen will not want to do any unity talk at this juncture. I think it's a bit premature. That's why I use the word, it's just talk. I have not heard anything of that sort from him, and I've not heard that from National Council, the ultimate body that will decide the party's direction. So we can leave it as that. It's talk and speculation. But every single person that I've mentioned is ready to contest for a viable position as the leader to serve the nation, not to unite with anyone.
It's here for now, but I'm sure that we will reconnect in the coming days.
Definitely, Blessed. I'd love to come to the studio and have a chit chat with you.
Definitely. We'll do that one of these days. But I'm grateful for your time. Happy New Year. And it's good to hear from you. Now, parents and guardians frustrated about the high cost of text and exercise books as they lament some of the prices have doubled or increased, leaving them with no option than to be selective in what to buy, while some cannot afford them at all. Some booksellers who also spoke to JoyNews are asking government to work with the publishers in regulating the prices of the books and also support local publication. Hannah Odami went surveying, and here's what she found out.
Prince Johnson entered this bookshop with an amount of money that he was so sure could buy all the test and exercise books for his 2 children. He, however, hesitated with few books because he says the prices of the items had doubled. Unable to buy everything, he resorted to selecting what he considers will be the most needed by his children.
What I budgeted for this one, I think I've exhausted them. And the way the economy is, you don't want to be doing impulse purchasing. So you buy what you have budgeted for. And then when funds are available, then you buy the rest.
These other parents shared similar experiences.
So I buy say books no onye bibi fa ma na ofo ya kumate. Sisi books ni boy dedin ye betua school fees, ye betua feeding fee. Nti yesre no onye bibi ma yen. Na yensu ntumi to books yen ni sky. You are suffering, my dear. Look, things the books are brought here.
it's almost 200 Ghana cedis. And then even previously, you can buy this one at 35 Ghana cedis. But I'm buying it now, 200 Ghana cedis. Imagine, I didn't buy food. So how can we manage to eat?
The booksellers, who are equally worried about the inability of the parents to purchase all they require for their children, had some recommendations.
They should talk to the publishers to reduce the things, and they should reduce the things for the publishers. If they reduce it for them, I think it will come down small for them.
Almost see a koi, omuka, omumepim. A baby almost omukofano no, and now papers now moto, at the year book no, ya to two papers no, yes, I ban in Shano Muay.
I said books about 30 years, and 30 years there is feasible. We have only a few publishers printing it, but this time the competition is too high, and the increment of the books are too high for us, and the discount is too small. So I'm just begging the publishers to increase the discount for us.
The publishers are also blaming the high cost of printing on the duty they paid on imported materials. They are asking government to reduce the taxes. As it stands, the booksellers are blaming the high cost of their products on the publishers. The publishers are also blaming government for the high duty cost, making it all a government issue to resolve. For JoyNews, I am Hannah Odame.
And you're welcome back. A big discussion is going on in Germany now about the country's use of coal and how its energy needs can clash with its climate policies. It has all centered around a village called Lützerath, which is on the verge of being swallowed by a huge ignite mine owned by one of the country's energy giants. Climate activists have occupied the town, and there have been scuffles with police as they prepare to drive them out. Let's cross over now to our partners, DW, and speak to Thomas Sparrow, who has more on this story for us. Thomas, how did this small village become the center of attraction of a debate around energy and climate in Germany?
This is not necessarily new, but it has attracted new attention in recent days, in recent weeks. On the one hand, because of Germany's decision to restart the use of coal, in particular the use of lignite, which is the dirtiest type of coal, as part of all its changes related to the war in Ukraine. You might know that Germany stopped receiving Russian gas and as such decided to restart or make a different approach related to its energy policies. And one of those elements of the different approach was restarting the use of coal instead of phasing it out as they planned. It is still a goal by the German government to phase it out, but in the immediate situation, in the immediate context, German officials did decide that they needed that coal as part of Germany's economic and energy priorities. And what's happening specifically in this little village called Lützerath is that it's about to be swallowed by a very big coal mine owned by one of Germany's energy giants. Now, climate activists have been there in Lützerath. They're against the idea that this town or village will be swallowed by this, and they're saying that this is much bigger actually than just about this village, that it's also about Germany's climate policies, about climate promises, but also about, in general, the use of coal. It is a very tense situation in Lützerath, and it is one that highlights the problems that Germany and the German government in particular are facing when it comes, on the one hand, to diversifying energy sources, and on the one hand, to fulfilling climate promises.
And I'm just wondering to what extent have Germany's new energy priorities created by the war in Ukraine affected the debate around climate protection in the country.
It has essentially intensified that debate. It was already an important issue before the war in Ukraine, how Germany would diversify energy sources, how it would focus on renewable energies instead of, for example, on coal and in particular lignite, how Germany would try and move forward to the next stage of renewable energy transitions. Now, obviously, the war in Ukraine and in particular the problems that Germany has been facing with the absence of Russian gas has changed, has shifted that debate, and that's why German authorities have at least decided to use on a temporary basis coal, for example, or other energy sources that are not necessarily considered very good for the environment. Now, if you ask specifically Germans what they believe about this, they do understand that this is a very important issue, and the fact that we're now talking about Lützerath, about this very small village, which, by the way, no one lives there. It's owned by the big energy company RWE. But the fact that we're talking now about this village does mean that the issue is, on the one hand, very symbolic, and on the other hand, extremely politicized by those, on the one hand, who believe that it's necessary to have coal, by those, on the other hand, who think that that goes against Germany's energy and climate priorities.
And have we seen any reaction ever since this incident?
Well, in general, obviously, it's something that citizens are following closely. I don't think many people before this debate actually knew where Lützerath is or what kind of situation it is involved in. But if you look, for example, at what Germans have been saying or what they think about the priorities for 2023, climate and also the whole energy issue are among the top priorities for Germany. The war in Ukraine still is the top priority, especially considering foreign policy issues of how the country would help or not Ukraine, how they would also work with other countries to try and help Kyiv. But all the issues about energy, all the issues about climate priorities and how that war in Ukraine will impact Germans at home still are very, very important. Also hotly debated again, which is why this case of Lützerath clearly explains why this issue is so problematic for many Germans in this country, why Germans are debating very intensely the issue of climate on the other hand, but also how Germany can continue with its energy priorities without necessarily affecting the environment.
Grateful. Thomas Sparrow with our partners Deutsche Welle. That's all we have for you here on The Pulse. For more news, log on to myjoyonline.com. We have updates on our stories there for you. I'm Blessed Sogah. Next, it's Let's Talk Showbiz.